am joined today by Wendy Chamberlain. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Lovely to be here with you. And you've got some nice greenery in your background as well. We're both doing the botanical backgrounds today.
Yes, it makes a
Um,
difference, I think.
it does. You have got one of the most interesting career stories and career histories that I have heard for a long time. So I'm really interested to get into all of that with you and kind of talk through the ins and outs. But as a starting point, it occurred to me this morning when I was thinking about our conversation. If someone had said to you, I don't know, when you were leaving school or thinking about what you were going to do, did you even know that what you do now was a thing? Did you even know that that would be an option?
I had no idea this would be an option, and I don't even think it was an option when I left school.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I would imagine it's probably similar for me if someone had kind of fast forwarded and said, "You're gonna be doing that." You just said, "I don't even know what that is." So take us back. What did you think at the beginning, when you were leaving school, studying, thinking about what you were gonna be doing? What were your thoughts back then and what did you end up doing?
This is a great question because I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea when I left high school back then. I had no idea which direction to go in. And so my dad sent me to secretarial college, showing my age a bit there, but he sent me to secretarial college and I did a year of that. And then from secretarial college, I got my first job working at a bank in the head office of a bank. And that's where things went from there. And after working there for a while, the person that I was dating got transferred to Japan, to Tokyo, and I decided to go. And we spent 2 years in Tokyo and then got back to Australia. And again, it's like, what am I going to do? And I ended up doing a bit of temping, secretarial temping for a little bit. And then I joined a law firm in the secretarial pool, I suppose, for a few years. And then I had a moment where I realized I wasn't happy with what I was doing and what was my next step that I wanted to do. And so at that point, I had to think about what are the things that I really enjoy and what's going to make me some money. Actually go for a role where I could earn a good income, but enjoy what I was doing. And I had a bit of a think and I thought, okay, so computers, I love computers. So this was in the 90s, mid 90s, where we used to have floppy disks.
Yeah, I remember.
I had floppy disks. And at the law firm, they disabled the floppy disks. So you couldn't actually, I suppose, so you couldn't take files. Or I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. So I thought, okay, I love computers. And I wanted to go to a company that where they would pay well. And so, funnily enough, the opportunity that presented itself was working at a mining company in their IT department. That's what came through. And I applied for the role and I got the role. And so I started, like, I had no IT experience whatsoever. I started working in the IT department on reception, and it was just a totally different environment to go from a legal law firm environment to the environment of a mining company. And I settled in there pretty quickly. And inside of the first year of working there, I decided to go and get my computing degree. So I was working full time and studying part time to get my computing degree. And as I said, I was on reception, but I ended up setting up the national help desk for that company. So I set up and ran their national help desk whilst also studying part time and working full time. And so it was 5 years straight. I remember I didn't even take summer semesters. I had no summers because I wanted to get through it. It was a 6-year course and I did it in 5 years. So that was my introduction to computing. And then, I mean, they were great times. It was a great company. But what happened was the so they had various mining assets and they had sold some of the assets and they were sitting on a bucket load of cash. And another larger, or I guess competing mining company went, thank you. I want to have this part of your business. and they just came in and there was a massive takeover and we all got retrenched. So it was in the year 2000 and the Olympic Games were on in Sydney. So we just all sat around because we were all losing our jobs because we were basically the head office in Melbourne and that company also had a head office in Melbourne. So they didn't need two sets of everybody. So with the exception of some skeleton staff that they kept on to keep the operations going for the transfer over, everybody got retrenched. Everybody. So I started I think I had a week and a half off. I went and got another role at an Australian, management consulting company, which was an IT company. And, yeah, I had a week and a half off, and then I started at that company. I started as a project coordinator, and but that was really so I had started my career or got my computing degree whilst I was working for the mining company, but it was then working and stepping into an actual management consulting company where I really started getting more experience because as what happens with consulting companies, as I'm sure the viewers are aware, you get put into lots of different companies in lots of different roles. So I got lots of exposure and experience through different industries through that time. And I was there, so that was in year 2000. So did lots of things. I moved my way up to a senior IT project manager. So we were managing lots of large projects. We had one of the major clients for the company was Telstra. So we did a lot of work in at Telstra, which is a big telco.
Mm.
And there was lots and lots of things to do in there, the different roles. And at some point in time, around about, I think it was about 2005, so I've been there about 5 years. Again, there was a merger, but it wasn't a merger. It was a takeover again with an Indian company coming in to buy the Australian company. And at that point in time, I was managing a $45 million budget. I had 36 staff, and I was managing an onshore and offshore integration or migration of trying to keep this project going because we still had targets to hit to get this project over the line, but I had to onboard offshore staff with my onshore staff. And it was quite a time where there was a lot going on and it was quite stressful. And I think I started to realize at that point, this wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. And separately to that, I was doing my own investing in real estate. And so, yeah, the merger was happening. And I mean, but look back now, you could say it was quite chaotic, trying to keep your what you were trying to deliver on point and on task with everything else going on. And I decided to leave that role and I started at another management consulting company here in Melbourne as well. And by this time, I had yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Clearly, I
It's
was
always 2020 hindsight, isn't it?
clearly I was stressed off my nut. Clearly,
Yeah.
but at the time, you don't realize that's what was happening. Now my husband and I, we moved and rented in the city for 12 months. So we were living in Collins Street in the city. And I remember I had started at this new role at another management consulting company, a smaller Australian-based company, and I was working in a role at Telstra. So we were living at one end of the city, and I would walk through the city in the morning to their head office, which was the other end of the city. And over the course of the time that I was there, that's when things started to really come to a head in relation to my health. So over the 12 months, I'd started to have these niggly health problems. And so, like, I'd get an itchy scalp and I had like really bad dandruff was starting and I would get headaches and I lost my appetite, but I put on 10 kilos and I was just really feeling blah. It's interesting when we think about it and talk about it now. At the time, you just keep going. You just keep going.
Yeah.
Go, "No, it's fine. I'll be fine. I'll be fine." And by November of 2006, I was vomiting every morning at the thought of going to work. It would start
Wow.
on Monday morning would roll around And it would happen Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single morning. On the weekends, it would stop because I didn't go to work on the weekend and I was fine. And then it would start again on the Monday. And this went on for 3 weeks. And my husband's going, maybe you need to go see someone. I'm like, no, no, I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm fine. And I clearly,
Yeah.
I was,
What were you telling yourself? Like, what's your internal monologue when that's happening? Just that I'm fine, I can do it. Just keep pushing on.
yes, it was exactly that
Mm,
because I think from a society perspective, you're told to just get on with it. You're there to do a role, do the role. You know, all the things, like, if you don't show up, then you're gonna let all these people down. If you're not doing this, then these people are gonna be disappointed, or your project won't get delivered, so that's gonna affect this. So you have all this internal dialogue going on in your own head, let alone what anyone else might be saying. And you know what? They're probably not even saying anything.
mm,
How many times do we think something without a conversation and the person is thinking something totally different, not even anywhere near that?
yeah.
And I think that because as a person, I am very, very driven. Like, you know, I knocked over the degree in 5 years when it normally takes 6. And so I think I just push, 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 push. And so you do not let something like a few little health niggles get in the way of you doing your role or delivering a project because that's what you're there to do. So get that out the way. That's not important. This is what you've got to, and the whole thing is actually on its head because the thing that is important is your health.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I totally get what you're saying, and have experienced a similar version of it myself. And I think it's that kind of classic case sometimes, isn't it, of one of the things which is actually a key strength for you, your drive and your ambition and delivery focused if played to the extreme, actually has a negative consequence to you. But at the time, you as you say, you don't see it like that. You're just kind of on that hamster wheel and you're going, going, going. And yeah, sometimes you just, as you say, in hindsight, you tell the story and it sounds, you're obviously laughing about it and you can see how crazy it sounds in hindsight. But at the time, you're just kind of on that track, aren't you? And you're just going.
You are on the track, and it's funny to say because yeah, I can see now. I laugh about it and see how ludicrous to
Mm,
push yourself to that level is and was. But you know that when I used to first talk about it and share it, I couldn't share it without crying
mm,
and getting really upset. I suppose about that your priorities are so out of whack that you're all about delivering something external for other people versus looking after yourself.
yeah.
And the reality is, I should have been looking after myself, and I wasn't. So after the 3 weeks, I went to the doctor, and she did all these kind of tests, blood tests, all kind of things, and everything was perfect. And she said, "There's nothing wrong with you. You're just stressed. You need a lifestyle change. Need to change what you're doing."
And how did that land at the time? Like, when she said that to you, what's going through your head when she says those words?
Well, as I mentioned, I was doing property investment on the side, right? When I was working, I was looking at deals, I was buying property. And so it made me realize I was not following what I wanted to do. Here's the other thing. That same year, so this was November of 2006. In June of 2006, I actually I read Kim Kiyosaki's book, Rich Woman. So she's the wife of Robert Kiyosaki. And her book was quite inspiring and inspirational. And I think it landed for me without realizing at the time that it landed for me. And I remember when I was looking, as I said, I'd go out on the weekends looking at real estate, and I was driving along the Western Ring Road. At this point in time, I was investigating possibly investing in Bacchus Marsh. And so I drive there, and it was like a 40-minute drive there and back each way. And on one of these drives, I had this absolute epiphany about what my purpose was. And my purpose is to educate and empower. And that was in June of 2006. So by November, so the universe was delivering me these messages.
Mm.
And because I'm like, no, this, I'm going for this. Yeah, I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm going for this. And I just kept getting whacked harder and harder and harder. And the whack around the head was to the point of vomiting. That's what was happening there. And so when I had been to the doctor and they'd said that to me, I had a conversation with my husband about it and I decided to resign. And I resigned on the 8th of December 2006. So I don't remember the exact date. Sorry. And 2 weeks later, everything had cleared up. Within 2
Wow.
weeks, everything cleared up because I'd actually switched my focus to why I'm here and what I'm here to do, which is educate and empower, and in the arena at which I absolutely adore, which is real estate.
A couple of questions there. When you were going in to have that conversation to resign, how did you feel? Like, did you feel like this is a line in the sand? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Do you remember how you felt about that conversation and ultimately, I guess, that decision?
I I've come to realize that I'm quite an independent, headstrong person in how I communicate. That's probably why I was very, very good at being a project manager
Mm.
because you've got to have your head around everything and be able to keep all the plates spinning and all the balls in the air and multitask and do that. And I'm very good at that. And so when I resigned, I remember feeling this sense of relief that I didn't have to do that anymore. Because when I think about it, I had started to really resent having to go and show up at a set time each day to do this role. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And look, I'm a bit cheeky and I'm a bit of a rebel and I will poke the bear. You know what I did? I
It's a nod of recognition, Wendy, because I'm a bit that way too, and I'm nodding and smiling because I'm seeing myself in that description.
because I think I just like to, as I say, poke the bear is probably the best way to describe it. I sent my out of office to say that I'd left, and my boss got that message. Got on the phone, and he said, "You haven't left yet. You've still got 2 weeks to go." And I went, I said, "Oh, is that on?" He said, "Oh, sorry, that must have been an accident." I kind of do that kind of stuff. I just like to, you know, be a bit
That's
cheeky.
great. I love it. Trying to help you. I'm
Yeah,
just making the transition easier so that people know not to expect me to be there to support them going forward.
well,
The
he hit the roof. He hit the roof, and I went, "Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'll take it off then."
I love that. The other question I had when you were telling that story, you mentioned as you were on that drive, driving back and forward, and you said you had a moment of kind of epiphany where you just realized that actually this is my purpose.
Mhm.
Talk me through that. Like how did that come about? What happened? Was it as just suddenly the thought comes into your mind and it's as clear as day? Like talk me through it.
Yes, so this is the funny thing about how the universe works because we never end up buying anything in Vegas. And I think it was that because I was on this drive back and forth over a number of weeks. And, well, you're just driving and thinking, and it just dropped into my head about what I'm here to do. And I started bawling because I finally knew what I was here to do and why I was here. And I'm driving down going, bawling. So it just came through as this is why you're here. And so as soon as that landed, that's when things really started to get shaky about feeling unwell and just
Mm.
I just knew in my gut that I wasn't doing the right thing. I wasn't if your time is spent working for somebody else and you are so miserably unhappy to the point that you end up vomiting at the thought of it, I think that's how it had to get delivered for me for it to be the wake up call to go, this is not what you are here to do. Because otherwise, because like I was really good at what I was doing. When I
Yeah, and you
focused on what
probably
I was
would have
doing,
just kept pushing yourself and kept going. Yeah.
I would have. I would have kept pushing,
Mm,
pushing, because that's what we do. Pushing, and it's very masculine energy. And I think we need to balance and step into your feminine energy. And in that environment being IT, because when I went to
mm,
uni, at that point in time, there was one other female in the class doing the degree. So this was 2001. It was very, very male dominated, and so there was a handful of us doing it, and then you step into the IT area, and again, at the mining company in the IT department,
mm.
there weren't a lot of other females there either. So, I feel in whatever discipline you are in or choose, that you adapt as a survival mechanism to do well. And certainly the environments that I was in from an IT perspective were boys' clubs and male dominated. And you put that cloak on
Mm,
to work within that environment. And that's what I did.
yeah. It's a really good analogy, I think, of well, 2 things that you said there, adapting to survive, but also that idea of, yeah, you just put the cloak on and you do what you need to do and you kind of push through it. That, also really resonates with me. I've had that experience myself. Gosh, when would it have been? Many moons ago, back in London, actually, when I first started working in recruitment. Very similar sort of environment, very similar sort of culture in the organisation, and it was just a case of, well, you just kind of have to suck it up and get on with it, and if you want the job, which at the time I was same as you, I was on the kind of on the tram tracks, on the hamster wheel of, oh yeah, I want to be here, I want to do this job, and yeah, that idea of putting the cloak on and just getting on with it, even though you don't like it and you're not enjoying it and it's not making you happy, and just kind of doing what you have to do to survive. It's actually fascinating. And as you said, hindsight, it's always so clear in hindsight, but it's actually fascinating to look back on it and to see what you can actually make yourself do, like how far you can actually push yourself and drive yourself, ignoring all the ignoring all the signs around you, how you're feeling, obviously your physical health. It's yeah, strangely fascinating to see how far you can actually take it.
Well, I remember years later, well, a couple of things. My boss at the time said to me, and it's funny because when he said this to me, I went, oh, because I didn't really see things that way. He said to me, I was the only person he knew who could take a samurai sword and take someone's head off, but leave it on their shoulders. When I was, one assumes, telling my team off. But further, later on, when I'd met people that I was working with at the time outside, they told me how scared they were of me. And at the time, I can tell you, at the time, I was just doing my job. That's what I thought. I was in there to do my job, which was to deliver the projects, and I had my team, and you had your team leaders that you worked with, and then they had the people under them, and I was very much, well, if that's your role, you're doing the role. I had no idea that people perceived that they were so scared shitless of me. And when they told me, I went, really?
Mm,
Which, wow. When I say about them, and that is very masculine energy for you to be in there and they're, oh, what, hang on, she's coming, let's look out, kind of thing. So it's been a real flip now to what I do, that approaching things much more softly from like a feminine energy. But as I said, I was in that role, doing that job, and that's how I was surviving in there.
Mm.
and it's like you're in there
So
bulldozing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So at that point when you resigned, and as you say, you feel relief, you've had that kind of epiphany of right, the empowering and educating, I think were the words you used around real estate. Did you know what that was going to look like when you kind of took the leap, or was it a kind of a jump and figure it out on the way down?
That's how it was a jump and figure it out. I reckon pretty much 99% of people that have worked in a job, I was in corporate IT obviously, but no matter what your job is, when you go, I don't like that anymore. I'm going to go work for myself. You're like, yay. And you go, what am I done?
What now?
Because no one tells you. No one tells you what it's like between working for someone else, which like I'm a square peg in a round hole. I don't fit in that environment, even though I did it for so long. I clearly, like I said, I like to ruffle the feathers. And so being told to show up at this time, at this place, da 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 da, I would do it, but you could tell I wasn't very happy about it. And so you do have this rigid, you're in this rigid box. You know where you've got to go, when you've got to be there. So you have these set of rules. When you step into the realm of working for yourself, you can run amok. And a lot of people that do stuff for themselves talk about how they get distracted by things, and particularly if you're working from home. There's all this stuff to do, and they'll go and do the washing, or they'll just, just potter around the house and actually won't get on with the thing. So I think that's one thing that people are not aware, that the structure, you create your structure. So you need to know what it is you want to do, and you need to get on with it. And so for me, I set up a company and I started running, I would run events, but I was again stepped into the realm with showing women in particular how to get started in real estate. So I was educating women on how to buy homes, basically. And so that was the stepping point into what I started to do and running my own company. But then again, you've got to realize that it's not like you can just show up to a desk 9 to 5 or 3 days. How many 5 days a week? I don't know how many days a week is at work now. 5 days a week, and then you'll be paid at the end of the week. No matter what kind of job you do within, because you kind of learn how much you got to do to get paid. You know that you're going to get thrown a kangaroo leg at the end of the week, and you'll get paid. Well, that is entirely off the table when you're working for yourself. If you don't hunt, you don't eat. And
Mm.
so I think that is a second thing that surprises a lot of people when they start in business, that you've got this great idea and people are going to love it and everyone's going to come and it's going to be fun, wonderful. And you sit there and it's crickets and you go, "Oh, okay, this didn't quite work as I thought it would."
It's never as simple as you think it's going to be.
Never real simple, because any business when you're starting is around connections and networking and relationships, and you have to establish those. And so if you're right startup phase, you need to start establishing that. You've got to get yourself out there and create a name for yourself and a brand and all that kind of stuff. And that can take a little bit of time
Mm. Yeah.
to do.
Uh, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it is probably, I think there's two actually. Definitely that one in terms of the mindset shift going from, I guess, a corporate role, or not even a corporate role, just an employed role where you do what you need to do. And then at the end of the week or the end of the fortnight, you get sent X amount of money, and round and round we go.
Yeah.
And as you say, when that's no longer there, and there's no guarantee that it's even going to come, and the only thing that can actually make that happen is you and your activity and your input. That's a huge shift, I think, particularly if you've never done it before, like if you've never been in that sort of either self-employed or kind of starting your own business. I think that's a massive shift. The other one I always notice, and still notice actually, is the, I guess in simple terms, it's the no one's coming over the hill to save you. Like that,
Mm.
something super simple like, I don't know, your computer stops working, or you lose a file or you lose something important. You know, back in the day, you'd pick up the phone and you'd ring someone and say, "Oh, my computer doesn't work," and they'd come and fix your computer. Well, that no longer exists.
No.
Anything and everything that goes wrong, any problems, any challenges, you've got to figure it out. Um, and I think I guess it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, excuse me, on the one hand, it's actually incredibly liberating, but it's also kind of terrifying. And I think depending on the type of personality you are, probably dictates which one of those you feel more so than the other one.
That's it. It is so true because I never even gave it a second thought that I wouldn't do it because I just didn't like what I was doing. And I had
Mm,
to get away from that because no one wanting to vomit every single weekday, that's ridiculous. So this is not working. I need to do something else. And so I guess to some degree, I burned the boats because although that's
yeah,
gone, this is what I'm doing, and let's go and do this. And I do with my passion for what I do, I have that get up and go. And so I think that is something that is quite key that you can apply to whatever it is you decide to do. If you just go for it because you know this is what you want to do and you jump in and do it. But like you just said, no one's coming to save you if something goes sideways. And you find this when you start bringing on people, whether they're staff or employees or contractors, there's no IT department to ring. It doesn't, I mean, until you get to a certain size, you don't
yeah,
have that. If something goes, something's not working, you got to work out. Like if your email's not delivering emails for whatever reason, you got to work that out. You can't ring up another department and have someone come in and fix things up. And so you really do have to have that belief in yourself and belief in whatever it is you're doing, no matter what realm you're stepping into. So for me, it was
mm,
real estate. It could be that you want to be a graphic artist. You could be wanting to be in the fitness industry, whatever it might be. But you've got to know that you've just got to keep going, keep
yeah.
going.
Mm. Do you think you still would have ended up in the same place if it hadn't have been that bad? So, like, if you hadn't have been so unwell, do you still think would have got there? It perhaps would have just taken you a bit longer, or do you think it almost needed to get that bad to actually give you the push you needed to take the leap, I guess?
It needed for me, it needs to get however
Yeah.
someone said to me recently, I don't listen to whispers. It needs to
Nicely
be
put.
it
Yeah.
needs to be like the marching band, the instruments, that because otherwise I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, huh, that's interesting. Look at that over there." No, it has to be bang for me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's delivered in different ways for different people, but for me, it needs to be a really clear message that that's not working, you gotta go this way. And so that's how it gets delivered for me. That if I and still to this day, if I'm not on track, I get messages. So even just recently, a few weeks ago, when I was d d my back went and, like, I couldn't even hardly walk. And a year ago, half my hair fell out because I was not constant like, if you get to that's how I get the attention from,
Yeah.
I realized, "No, no, you gotta fix something." So when you can't even get out of bed without help because your back's gone, you go, "Okay, well, you're not." How do you get
Uh,
slowed down? You
that's
can't
not a
move.
whisper. That's not a whisper, Wendy. That's a pretty loud message, that one.
So that's how the messages get delivered for me. So they'll get delivered to each of your listeners in whatever way. Because maybe some people do listen to whispers, but that's not how I roll. It's not never how I've rolled.
Yeah.
So it's
And
got to be quite
how
in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and, again, I think often it's so much easier to see it in hindsight, particularly sometimes the escalation. You mentioned it before of actually as you look back, you're like, "Well, that's probably the first time I thought that, and then that was the second time, third time, fourth time," and it wasn't until, as you say, you get absolutely smacked in the face that you go, "Yeah, okay, I actually actually now need to really take this seriously, but in hindsight, there were all these smaller smaller kind of crumbs, along
Yeah,
the way that you can now see much more clearly. So that was
yeah.
what, 2006, did you say?
2006. Yes.
Yeah, so coming up for 20 years ago, 18 years ago. How has it been? I'm sure a roller coaster in its a roller coaster in its own way, but yeah, tell me about it.
It has been a roller coaster in its own, yeah. Laughing about it, 'cause you can look back in hindsight and go you can be where you are today and see how the things it's not a straight line, but see how
No.
everything that happened led you to where you are right now. But looking in a forward direction, it doesn't roll like that. It doesn't go that way. And so I first started, as I said, educating women with real estate, and I would run events, and I was really, really good at what I was doing. And I'd run events once a month, and I had people say to me, and I'd bring speakers in to talk about various aspects of real estate. And I'd have people say to me, "Why don't you get up and speak on the stage?" I said, "No, no, 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 because you know what? At the time, I didn't think I was good enough to do it," which is crazy because I know so much about real estate, but you still have this self doubt about certain pockets and blind spots, I think.
Mm.
And I ensure that applies to anyone in any aspect of their life, that you'll see someone and you think they're doing it better than you. But what we come to realize is they may be doing it differently to you, but doesn't make it that it's better than you. So that's been a learning in itself. And I got to 2009 and the internet was really starting to ramp up. And because I had this computing degree, I thought I'd go into that space and start showing people how to learn about the internet and how to learn about social media, which is what I did. And just when it was all starting, and I remember running events where we'd show you what the hashtag was and what the at symbol meant, like really early days. But then again, more and more people started coming into the space. And here's me going, well, I've got the computing degree. These people aren't qualified. So basically, I cracked the shit with all these other people. And then I went back into real estate and I was doing copywriting. And then one of the people that was working with me to help with the copywriting, she started as a buyer's advocate, a buyer's agent. And I have these moments, it's funny, it's happened a few times. I have these moments where I hear about something and I want to shift heaven and earth to do it and get there. And she said that she'd started in as a contractor to someone else to be a buyer's agent, which is to buy houses for people. And as soon as she mentioned that, something clicked in my head, and I went, "I've got to do it. I've got to do it. I've got to do it." And I found the person and got in touch with the person, and it went to the voicemail. And I don't know if you've ever have had a moment like this where you constantly are checking your phone, make sure the internet is working because waiting for them to call you back because you're so driven, you know that's what you want to do. And that's how that all came about for me to be doing what I do now, which I absolutely love. It's just I think once I know what it is I wanna be doing, I go after it full on.
What is it that you love about it?
The thing that I absolutely love is helping people. If I can describe it in a way, it's the look on their face when I know that they've bought their home. So we particularly work with home buyers and the way that I describe it is I help people change their lives because it doesn't matter whether you're at the start or at the end. If you're a first home buyer and that when they're so excited and that look on their face where they've got their first home. And even at the other end of things where they might be going into care or working with a family and they've passed away or they're downsizing, whatever it might be, you are you are there and that support for them to take that next step. So you're not involved in their lives as such, but you are just taking care of that one thing, which is a massive amount of money and responsibility because we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars buying and selling people's houses.
Mm.
So for me, it's that ability and they're trusting me to help them take that next step. And it's the look on their face. that look on their face when they know that they've bought a house. Hard
Lovely.
to
That's a
describe.
great answer. I love that. And I totally agree with you. I mean, it is in that sense life changing, and to have someone in that type of scenario when it's, as you say, financially a massive thing, just the legal ramifications of it and the amount of complexity and all of the different things that are going on. But to feel that not feel, to have someone who's on your side and actually kind of walking you through that and helping you and answering your questions. And yeah, I can imagine is a hugely, hugely powerful thing.
Powerful and like I love it. My one of my first time buyer clients called me her property mama, which I was so chuffed about because I step in there and you do not get between me and my client because I will steamroll. Good moments of project management days again. And I am there on a mission to perform that role for my client, and I will move heaven and earth for them to get them the result that they need. And so in this industry, we run across so many people that are mediocre at what they do. That's probably the politest way of putting it. And I know lots about the other parts of the roles and the aspects of things enough that if someone is not doing what they need to do, I can pull them up on it. And we're even just this past week, we had somebody for our client, the financial side of it, they didn't do their job. Now, if that in any way, shape, or form is going to start to impact my client, you're going to know about it from me. And I'm going to call you out and say, you should have done your job. And if I'm doing your job better than you are, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what happened there.
I like that. You're someone's property mum.
I am their property mama, and that's why that became the podcast name, and that's the reason for it. Is and I ran into her the other week actually because she bought locally to me, and yeah, she's loving where she's living, and I did reach out to her when I'd started the podcast to say you inspired the name by calling
Yeah, that's
me
great.
your property mama, and lots of people that I speak to think it's a great name, and it really does represent how I like to buy real estate for my clients, which is with heart. It's so
Mm.
important that you get to know your clients and it's what's going to be the best for the client. You're not just shoehorning them into any property. If a property's not going to be right, I'll say to them, we're not buying this property. And I've done that quite a few times. They're like, we're not buying this house. I'm like, why not? I said, because it doesn't actually meet the brief you originally said. Because people sometimes if it takes a little bit longer, they might get a bit more desperate or wanting to buy something, and I'll say, "No, your house is coming." And people come and they might say, "I haven't been able to find anything," and I'll say, "It's because your house hasn't been ready yet.
Yeah,
It's coming, it'll be there. It's just not
yeah.
ready yet."
It's so true, isn't it? I think it's true in so many aspects of life, but I think it can be sometimes you actually just need to hear that from an external person because you probably wouldn't hear it from yourself, or you wouldn't perhaps believe yourself, or you'd shush the voice and and wait for the more extreme version of that to come along. But yeah, it's so true. Um,
Yes.
Across all of the things that you've learned, and as I said at the start, it's such a fascinating, and I just love the way that you have reflected on the journey and the sort of the learnings that you brought from it, and also the way that you think about it. I just find really, really interesting. Is there one thing that sort of stands out to you? My final question on the show is always the same. It's the what do you know now that you wish you knew then? Is there one particular thing that stands out for you?
The main thing that stands out for me and has done through the many years and the different roles of trying all the different coats, because that's probably the best way to talk about it, is to back yourself, to believe that you have what it takes. Because I don't think there's any mistakes. There's never any mistakes. They're all ways to learn, and that may be learning more about yourself. And that can be that you've gone in a wrong direction. It definitely
Mm,
can be that way because if you keep trying on the coat and it's just not fitting, Well, it's not supposed to fit, but you will know when things have finally lined up for you. And life's a journey, and it can be quite fluid. And just because you've taken a step in a direction doesn't mean you have to continue in that direction. That's probably one thing to say, because I think we as humans feel committed to a lot of the ones other people around us, whereas we may not necessarily put our own needs, wants, desires, and what is best for us first. And I think we need to do that. And that's coming back to backing yourself. And you've heard that analogy. People say you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help others. And that applies to whatever it might be you doing for your career or running a business, that really take the time to, and maybe it's just annually when you have a little bit more time to stop and slow down. We're coming into a great time of year, but you can do it any time of year, that take a moment to think about what you love to do, what you don't like to do, and really take those thoughts on board and know that you've got this. You have got whatever it is here you're here to do, whatever that might be. And that can be as big or as small. And people sometimes get caught up in thinking, I'm not doing enough. It needs to be grander. It needs to be bigger. I need to have this massive career, all these things. It can be that you just do your everyday thing and you have ripples in your community at that level. It could be ripples in your own family. It doesn't have to be you're out there and you're changing the world, but it all comes back to you and backing yourself.
I absolutely love that, and also 100% agree. It's so interesting, isn't it? You said it earlier as well in terms of, I think you were talking about career path at the time and saying, it's never a straight line. It kind of always looks a bit like this. And I 100% agree. And I also think that ties into the point you just made there of actually sometimes the missteps or the wrong, quote unquote, wrong direction. Actually, you learn more from those things because you learn actually, no, that really isn't the direction I want to go in. That is you, to use your analogy, that's not the cloak I want to wear. I can actually close that door. I know it's not that. I need to go in this other direction. And I think sometimes, certainly in my experience, I think sometimes people can get a bit stuck at that point because
Yes.
they think that the fact that it feels wrong or that it's a misstep is a negative thing. I think the opposite is true. Well, great. You've learned something that is not right for you. What a awesome piece of information to have. You're now empowered with that information to go in a different direction and find something that is right. So yeah, I love that answer. And uh, thank you so much, Wendy. I just love, yeah, I just love the way you think about things. I love the way you talk about it, and it's been really lovely chatting with you, so I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. And I love it.